Welcome to Word on Wearside. Today we will be discussing finances while at university and the struggles surrounding them. We talk to two ex-students, Amy and Rachel, about their experiences, and we will also hear from Andreea from the University Student Support Services. We delve into why many students at the University of Sunderland need to work alongside their studies. Balancing work with studies can lead to time management struggles, stress, and a heavy workload. Businesses can also sometimes hesitate to employ students due to concerns about flexibility, as students may have limited availability. Despite these challenges, students manage by prioritising tasks, careful planning, and seeking support of employers who understand their academic commitments. We will discuss the positives and negatives in more detail in this episode hosted by Ellie and Neave.
On the topic of jobs, have you ever had to juggle a job while studying? I know I have. Everything from fast food, cleaning, to bartending. Honestly, it's been a real challenge trying to balance work with assignments and still have time for friends. But for me, there wasn't much of a choice. My job's my main income, covering rent, food, and all those other little expenses that add up fast. Without it, I wouldn't be able to make ends meet. It's tough, but sometimes necessary. How did you manage?
So personally, I've never had much luck with jobs, and that includes before I even started at university. During my foundation year, I was only able to get a job around Christmas time as a temp for a clothing store, and they weren't that accommodating to my schedule, unfortunately, so that did make it a bit harder than it could have been. As this was during my foundation year, it was my first year at uni ever. It was also my first time living completely alone, so I had no choice but to work. The contract ended around New Year's, and I spent the rest of my foundation year applying to jobs. I think I had 2 interviews, but I didn't get either of those jobs, so I mustn't have done very well. I spent a lot of that year just constantly searching for jobs on Indeed, Monster Jobs, handing my CV out in the bridges and other areas of Sunderland, but had no luck. And honestly, that did put a real strain on my life in general and just made everything way more stressful, as once I paid my rent with the student loan, it was a really tight budget to live off. It honestly did affect my university life because I had all of these extra stresses and money worries, and it affected my work quite a bit, especially during my first year of the degree. However, it did teach me a lot about money and budgeting though, and I feel like 2 years later I am a bit better at managing money. Not perfect, as I'm still learning, but I feel way more secure now than I did back then. I also worked during last summer, and that kept me afloat in between student loan payments, and I currently have another Christmas temp job, which I was so happy to have gotten, as it's taken a huge weight off my shoulders, as Christmas is a really expensive time.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. Last year at university, it was my first year, and although none of my jobs were temp jobs, a lot of them did not line up with my uni schedule, which meant eventually I had to leave the job. And then I was stuck budgeting. I no longer had an income apart from my student finance, which at the time was not a lot of money once I paid rent, bought food, etc. So I had to really learn to budget, and it was very challenging at first, but just like you said, I think I have come a long way and I've learned a lot from doing it.
So aside from talking about our own experiences, we talked to 2 ex-students who also studied in the Northeast.
I found that working was definitely manageable with my course, but our contact hours were not full-time, which was obviously quite helpful. And it was really important to have that work-life balance and have enough time for university work. So I sought employment, which was bank style, so I was able to pick up shifts as and when this was adequate for me.
I graduated from Sunderland in 2011, needed to work, and I did for those 3 years.
That was Amy and Rachel, who both gave us an insight into working while studying at university. Rachel talks about studying at Sunderland University 15 years ago.
Was given a maintenance loan or a bursary or whatever you would call it now. However, yes, it paid for the rent and did have some left over, but definitely needed to work, and I did for those 3 years. I used to go back home on a weekend and work at a cleaning job that I had. Obviously, I had my own experience of kind of household bills through my parents, understanding how to deal with money and budget and plan meals. So I could afford specific things.
And Amy spoke about working while studying at the University of Newcastle 6 years ago.
It was interesting to hear their experiences and compare them to our own. Their insights have made me see that not much has changed for university students, unfortunately, as even 15 years ago in Rachel's case, students still found it essential to work as they struggled without.
Yeah, I do think it was very interesting to hear their experiences at their time working whilst at university. I think it was also very insightful to see that their experiences are quite similar to ours.
Yeah, considering Rachel graduated 13 years ago, she still had the same experiences. I mean, there's the cost of living now and things weren't as expensive back then, but the matter still remains the same. Like, it is quite essential to have a job at uni if you don't want to struggle.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think as well, obviously, Amy went 6 years ago, and again, even her experience was very similar to ours. So it kind of shows that throughout the years, the struggles that students have with working and dealing with financing is continuing to be the same, no matter how much time goes on, or even what's going on with the economy, like the cost of living right now.
Yeah.
I think something that could help and would benefit students a lot is if supermarkets did cater for students more, because obviously food is a lot more essential than other things.
Yeah, like, for example, a 10% discount at Tesco is more beneficial to a student than like something like Zara or something. As you say, food is way more essential than a new item of clothing, and I just think it would help.
Yeah, because I think these days as well, clothing wise, there's a lot more places to go for cheap clothes. You can go to charity shops, you can use online pages such as Vinted or eBay, whereas with food, there's not always a lot of choices in other places to go. Obviously, sometimes supermarkets have reduced sections, but it's kind of like winning a fight, being able to actually get any of the reduced products. And obviously, most of them run out that same day. So you have to go there every single day and get the reduced products. And obviously, if you're working and you're doing schoolwork, it's not really going to be attainable. We also spoke to our interviewees about whether they found working at university was essential and beneficial for them.
I think employment during university is really important. It helps support your lifestyle and allows you to do things outside of university, and equally it allows you to meet a different range of people that you wouldn't necessarily meet otherwise.
Having a job helped me to not feel the pressure of, I've got no money left, I can't afford this. That stress of being at university for the first time, especially in my first year, there was no other option for me but to work and have a job and study at the same time. Would have been a lot easier if I didn't have to do that, but it just wasn't an option in my case.
As well as talking to ex-students and discussing our own experiences, we spoke to Andreea, who was a member of staff at the Gateway team at the University of Sunderland.
But do not worry if you don't attend Sunderland University, as all other universities will provide the same student support. I went to the University of Westminster before I was a student at Sunderland, and I was provided with the same help from the student support team.
Andreea gave us some great advice for any students who may be struggling with finances at university.
So if you're feeling overwhelmed by financial problems, you can always speak to our student financial guidance team, which are based at City Campus. They're a lovely team and they do help out quite a lot with financial queries and advice. You can also apply for bursaries and scholarships, and if you're eligible, you can get that. Otherwise, if you're really overwhelmed by your studies and work life altogether, you can go on a leave of absence, which can be between 6 months to 1 year. Personally, I am on a leave of absence. I'm due to come back in January to finish my master's in journalism. So I would recommend it if you're feeling too stressed with that.
What Andreea said is very insightful to the help we can get at university. Knowing there's other options, such as bursaries, would definitely take some pressure off.
Yeah, it's really comforting to know that the support in place if it's ever needed, and obviously knowing everything is confidential helps as well, as financial worries obviously can be quite stressful. So personally, it would make me feel more comfortable speaking to the team and being aware that there are options and people who can help.
That wraps up this episode of Word on Wearside, Balancing the Books. It was very insightful for us to hear the experience of two ex-students. We also hope the advice given by Andreea will put your mind at ease to any potential finance problems you may face. But just remember that that is only a small part of university. There are so many amazing opportunities that come with university. Once-in-a-lifetime experiences, meeting new friends, and joining societies. The opportunities are endless.
We hope that this episode can be of some help for you in case you are going through any of the things that we have discussed. Remember that you're not alone and there is always someone there to help, such as your university guidance team or wellbeing team.